everyone, welcome to our deep dive into the world of productivity. We're tackling Darius Foro's book, Do It Today, Overcome Procrastination, Improve Productivity, and Achieve More Meaningful Things. Even the title, it's like a little nudge, right?
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention.
In a good way, of course. It's like, okay, let's get to it. And, I think we can all relate to that feeling of procrastination sometimes. So think of this as your, I don't know, your pep talk, maybe a strategy session, all rolled into one.
I think what's interesting about Foru's approach is that it goes beyond just those surface level tips.
Yeah.
Like we always say, oh, I'm just lazy, but Koru really dives into how it's more of an internal battle, this struggle between what we know we should be doing, but that urge to just kind of escape, the discomfort.
Right. It's like knowing you should be tackling that big project, but suddenly organizing your desk drawer or catching up on like the latest online drama seems so much more appealing. What about you? What's your procrastination go-to?
For me, it's totally getting lost in like a rabbit hole of online articles. But, Foro actually talks about Stephen Pressfield's idea of resistance. It's from the book The War of Art.
Oh yeah.
And it's basically this internal enemy that like whispers these lies, tries to keep us from doing our best work. And it's so tricky because it often disguises itself as something harmless or sometimes even productive.
Oh, absolutely. It's like resistance is a master of disguise,
Yeah.
Makes you think you're being so productive when in reality you're avoiding the real deal. But, as tempting as it is to just give in, I mean, there are consequences, right?
It's like, yeah, you get this temporary relief, but at the cost of like long-term stress. There's actually research on this study by Tyson Baumeister. They found that, while procrastinators might enjoy themselves in the short term, they end up paying for it later with increased stress, lower grades, even their health suffers.
Wow, that's a pretty hefty price to pay for, a little bit of temporary relief. Makes me think of those all-nighters I pulled in college. Yikes. Not exactly a sustainable approach to, well, anything, really.
Definitely not. That's why Foro is so focused on building the solid foundation, both mentally and physically, for productivity.
Yeah.
He's big on daily exercise, and he brings in these philosophies like stoicism and mindfulness.
Yeah, it's like training your mind almost like it's a muscle, building that mental toughness for resilience. And he explores those philosophies, like you said, stoicism, which is about focusing on what you can control, and then mindfulness, just staying present and focused. I mean, it all works together.
It does. And Foro also, he emphasizes daily habits like journaling, reading, prioritizing tasks, and really important, limiting useless information.
Yeah.
It's about creating structure, right? And cutting through all the noise.
Yeah, and that's where his idea of creating systems comes in. I mean, it's like trying to, I don't know, build a house without a blueprint. You might have all the materials, but without a plan, it's just chaos. And Thoreau, he gives you the tools to design your own blueprint for success so you're not just relying on willpower. Because let's face it, willpower can be pretty flaky.
Absolutely. These systems, they help automate your decisions,
Yeah.
freeing up your mental energy for the actual task. He even talks about, it's called the 30-minute evening ritual.
Oh, yeah.
Use it to, set himself up for a productive day,
Yeah.
closing out the day, reviewing the next day's calendar, prepping, visualizing.
I love that. Ending the day on a positive note and like setting those intentions for the next day. It's like giving your brain that clear roadmap, to follow. But what about those moments when we hit a wall? Just can't seem to focus. Thoreau, he has some pretty interesting thoughts on how to kind of overcome those mental blocks.
He does. One of his more radical ideas is actually disconnecting from the internet to improve concentration. Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive in our, hyper-connected world, but his argument is that all these constant notifications and distractions, they actually harm our productivity.
Oh, yeah, it's that constant context switching.
Exactly. Forcing our brains to constantly switch back and forth, never really getting into that deep focus.
I have to admit, that's a tough one for me. But it's not just personal opinion. He actually digs into the science behind why disconnecting is so effective. I mean, research does show that all those notifications and multitasking, it actually lowers our productivity. And it can even lead to more stress.
And he practices what he preaches, too. He disconnects from the internet regularly and says it's made a huge difference in his focus, his ability to get things done. It's a pretty bold statement, but it definitely makes you think, are we in control of our technology, or is it controlling us?
Right, right. That's a really big question for all of us to consider, for sure. So let's say someone's ready to tackle procrastination, embrace a more productive life. Where do they even begin? For he has a ton of tactics to help us fight that internal battle with resistance.
He does. He lays out a ton of specific, actionable advice in Do It Today. One strategy that really stands out is his idea of elimination, simplifying your life, ruthlessly cutting out unnecessary ideas, projects, commitments, even physical clutter.
Oh, wow. It's like Marie Kondoing your entire life. I love that.
Right?
Sometimes the best way to get more done is to actually do less. Be fiercely protective of our time and energy. It's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter. What about you? What stood out to you the most so far?
For me, it's the emphasis on building that strong mental foundation first. It's like he's saying, before you even think about tackling that to-do list, equip yourself with the mental tools to handle the inevitable challenges.
That's a great point. It's not just about like checking things off a list, right? It's about cultivating that inner strength and resilience to stay focused and motivated over the long haul. And for he gives us a roadmap for doing just that.
He does. And he also gives you specific tactics, like using past successes to fuel your focus, tapping into
Yeah.
those moments where you felt unstoppable, reminding yourself of what you're capable of achieving.
I love that. It's like a mental high five, remembering those wins. And what's really cool is he even backs it up with neuroscience. He explains how recalling positive events actually increases serotonin in the brain, which enhances focus.
Precisely. He's not just throwing out motivational fluff. He's grounding his advice in both ancient wisdom and modern science.
That's a powerful combination. So we've talked about building mental resilience, creating systems, even using our past successes to boost our focus. But I know there's so much more to unpack and do it today. There are strategies for building habits, reading effectively, even designing your ideal workday. We'll dive into all of that next time.
So remember how we were talking about Thoreau reading 100 books a year?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
He has a whole section in Do It Today about his reading strategies. He calls it Always Be Reading, and he means it.
Wow, that's commitment. But I mean, imagine all the knowledge you could gain just constantly feeding your mind with new ideas.
Exactly. And he's not just passively reading. He's really strategic about it. He keeps a book inventory.
A book inventory.
Yeah, it's a list of books he wants to read, organized by topic or theme. So he's not just picking up random books. He's choosing ones that align with his goals.
That's a great idea. I always get overwhelmed at the bookstore or library, just so many choices. Having a curated list would definitely make things easier. What other reading tips does he have?
Well, he really stresses dedicated reading time. He's like, if you don't schedule it in, it's not going to happen. So he actually blocks out time each day specifically for reading.
Just like you would for a meeting or appointment.
Exactly. It's about making reading a priority, not just something you squeeze in when you have a few minutes.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about before with creating systems. It's like you remove that decision fatigue and make it easier to stick with those good habits.
Absolutely. And he also talks about active reading, not just letting the words wash over you, but really engaging with the material. He highlights passages, takes notes, rereads sections that stand out to him.
So that's not just quantity, it's quality too. You really got to absorb that information, connect it to your own life.
Right. That's where the real value is. Thoreau is all about applying what you learn, not just hoarding knowledge.
It's like the difference between having a library full of books you never open and a toolbox full of tools you actually know how to use.
Mhm.
Speaking of tools, what about some of those other tactics we mentioned? I'm curious to hear more about, using past successes.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Remember how we were talking about how recalling positive events can actually increase serotonin in the brain?
Yeah, like giving yourself that mental boost by remembering those times when you were crushing it, achieving amazing things.
Exactly. And Thoreau suggests doing this not just when you're feeling stuck, but as a way to start your day. Reflect on a recent win, even if it's small.
I love that. Priming your brain for success, starting the day on that positive note. What other tactics does he recommend for staying focused?
He's really into the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's working in those focus intervals, 25 minutes of work, then a 5-minute break.
Keeps things fresh, right? Like tricking your brain into staying engaged.
Exactly. Breaks down those larger tasks, prevents burnout. And Thoreau also really stresses having a clear plan for your day, create a schedule, prioritize your tasks.
No more wandering around aimlessly, wondering what to do next.
Right. And he also talks about accountability. Find an accountability partner.
Oh, like someone to share your goals with and who'll make sure you're actually making progress.
Yeah, it's like having a cheerleader and a coach all in one.
That's awesome. Sometimes just knowing someone's aware of your goals can be that extra push you need.
Totally. It helps with that feeling of isolation you can get when you're working towards big goals.
It's a good reminder that you're not alone. Speaking of big goals, we've been talking a lot about the, practical side of productivity, but Faru really digs into the idea of meaning, right? Finding meaning in your work.
Absolutely. He argues that the biggest reason people procrastinate is they're not doing work that feels meaningful to them.
It's like that feeling of being stuck in a rut, going through the motions, but not really feeling passionate about it. No wonder procrastination becomes an issue.
Exactly. Faru believes that when your work aligns with your values and interests, that motivation comes naturally. You're not relying on willpower anymore. It's like you're driven by a deeper sense of purpose.
That's powerful. But I think a lot of people struggle with finding that sweet spot, where what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what the world needs all come together. Does Faru talk about how to actually discover that kind of work?
He does. He encourages people to really think about their values, their interests, their skills. What are you naturally drawn to? What do you lose track of time doing? What problems do you want to solve?
Those are great questions to consider. It's like he's encouraging some serious soul searching, right? Really getting to know yourself.
He is. And he also emphasizes experimentation, like try new things, step outside your comfort zone, see what sparks your interest.
That's so important. Don't be afraid to explore. You never know what you might find.
Exactly. Even if you don't find your dream job right away, the process of exploration is valuable in itself.
Yeah, it's like they say the journey is the destination. So we've talked about building mental resilience, creating systems, finding meaning in your work, even mastering reading. But Ford doesn't stop there. He's got some pretty unconventional strategies for creating a more fulfilling and productive life.
He does. I think that's what makes Do It Today so interesting. He challenges the conventional wisdom and offers a fresh perspective.
I'm excited to keep exploring. But I think we've covered a lot for now. Let's take a pause and come back to dive into some of those more unconventional strategies in the next part of our deep dive. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive. We've talked about all these practical strategies for productivity, but Thoreau also makes us think bigger, about the bigger picture. It's not just getting things done, it's about a life that feels meaningful, right?
Exactly. And he tackles some pretty deep questions. Like, he has a whole section on how he measures his own life.
Yeah,
And it's not about money or status, which is refreshing.
that is refreshing, especially these days. So what does he focus on then?
Three things:
hmm
energy, work, and relationships. He sees these as the real indicators of a good life.
Okay, let's break those down. Energy, what does he mean by that?
He's talking about physical and mental energy, taking care of your health, both of them, so you actually have the energy to pursue your goals and will enjoy life.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like you gotta fill your own tank first, right? What about work? I'm guessing it's not just about like clocking in and out.
Definitely not. Foro believes work should challenge you, use your skills, and let you make a positive contribution.
I like that. Finding work that's like aligned with your purpose, not just a paycheck. And what about relationships? Where do they fit in?
Foro is really big on strong relationships. He says they're essential for happiness. Spending time with loved ones, connecting, building that support system.
So it's like a holistic approach, right? It's not just productivity, but well-being, purpose, connection, all of it.
Exactly. And he ties all this together in his idea of a meaningful life. It's about aligning your actions with your values, following your passions, and, making a positive impact.
It's about a life that feels real authentic, not just one that, I don't know, looks good on the surface.
Right. And he gives actual advice on how to do that. Define your values, set goals, make a plan.
So it's like those productivity strategies, but applied to your whole life, not just work.
Exactly. Taking those principles of focus, intention, action, and applying them to everything.
And he talks about continuous learning too, right? Always growing.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning. He's all about it. Challenging yourself, trying new things, never stop growing.
It's like complacency. That's the enemy of a meaningful life. Keep pushing those boundaries.
And he actually does it himself. He talks about rereading his favorite books on Stoicism and writing every month, even though he already knows the material, It's about reinforcing those principles, always seeking new insights.
I love that. It's staying humble, staying curious. True mastery is not a destination, it's a journey.
Exactly. It's like viewing life as an adventure, always discovering, always growing.
And that brings us back to do it today. It's not just a productivity hack, it's a whole philosophy.
It is. Taking action, making progress, going after your goals with passion.
And embracing the present moment, today's the only day we have.
Foru remind us that we all have the power to change our lives, to overcome procrastination, to create a future that aligns with our values and dreams.
Yeah, and sometimes all it takes is that first step, the decision to do it today.
That's the key. Take that step and then the next until you've built the life you want.
Well, we covered a lot in this deep dive. The science of procrastination, finding meaning in your work, creating a life that feels real and fulfilling. It's been great.
It has. Hopefully insightful, inspiring, all of that.
Definitely. But before we go, one last thought. Foru talks a lot about doing the work, taking action, right? But he also emphasizes rest and recharging. How do you find that balance? What are your strategies?
That's the question, isn't it? The one we all struggle with. I think it's about finding what works for you, experimenting, being kind to yourself. For of his book, it's a great starting point. But creating a fulfilling and productive life, that's a personal journey.
Well said. And if you're ready to start that journey, definitely check out Do It Today, Overcome Procrastination, Improve Productivity, and Achieve More Meaningful Things. It's full of practical advice, inspiring insights, helps you take control of your time, your energy, your life.
A book that can really change your perspective on productivity and what a meaningful life can be.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your biggest takeaways? What are you going to try? Share with us in the comments. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep doing it today.